Cody Bellinger is signed, but Jordan Montgomery, Blake Snell, Matt Chapman, and more remain out there. Is it time to downgrade them? We talk about those guys and a whole lot more coming up next on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Greetings, everybody. Jeff Erickson here with Fred Zinkie on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the good folks at Fantrax.com. You'll be hearing more about them in a second. We are going to be talking a lot of draft stuff. We got ongoing TJFBI, Tout Wars Draft and Hold League. I just broadcasted the Tout Wars different category league, alternate category league today. It was good stuff on that. So I'm seeing a lot of draft boards lately. Fred, how are you?
I'm great. Yeah, like you said, we've got drafts going on all over the place. So it's not just theoretical anymore. It's actually happening. It's practical. People are really putting themselves out there now on not just who they say they're going to draft, but who they're actually drafting. And I like it.
Yep, absolutely. You know what? Those first two drafts are battle testing projections, and I'm still tweaking them. After I see something that remains like, oh, I'm too low on that guy, too high on that guy. We always talk about that.
Yep.
It's still all the way through the last draft of the season. I'll be doing that. You constantly put to the test on your assumptions, your projections, and we're in different draft pockets. Like I keep on drawing relatively early spots. If I draft towards the back end of the first round, I might have a whole different perspective. Right now, I'm drafting in the fifth spot in TGFBI. In Labor, I drafted third. In Scarf, I drafted second. I actually drew a number one in NFBC 50. I have had one middle pick, and that was the Speakers draft. I think that was ninth out of 15 in the first pitch Arizona Speakers draft, but haven't had anything back in the turn yet. So it's you can anticipate it, but until you do it, it's different. It feels different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to say anything that's revolutionary here, but the slow drafts to start your draft season, I find are so valuable.
Yep.
I've picked mostly towards the first half, but it's just interesting. Like even in my Tout Wars draft today, I made a couple picks and thinking about having that time window. And I tried not to use a massive amount of time, but just being able to take when it's your turn on the clock, depending on what you're doing with work and things like that, being able to take half an hour and really break down 3 or 4 players who you have at the top of your board and which one do I actually want, and you go back and forth them. It actually creates way more confusion. I find sometimes
paralysis by analysis.
Yeah, than if I was just on a minute or a minute and a half clock. But it does, you do come out of it with certain players being oh, maybe I was a little too high on this person, or no, I really do believe in this person. So a lot of the players, because I picked early in my early drafts, I find a lot of the players, who come around those turns. But then once you get past about round 10, it's not really about where you are anymore. It's more, who do you have at the top of your board? But yeah, no, I'm finding I'm making a lot of little tweaks on my rankings, which by the way are now available at the Yahoo site. So
I did see the push on that over the weekend. I get every time Yahoo Fantasy posts an article, I get a push on my phone. So you're very famous on my phone.
Oh, okay.
So you got that going for you. I'm sure it's a big feather in your cap, really. But let's talk about the free agents that are out there. Cody Bellinger signed really late on Saturday night. Luckily, it was up late Saturday night, so it can react to that. Talk about it on the Sunday show. Your reaction to him rejoining the Cubs?
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, solid place to hit. I think more it's just a place where he was comfortable last year.
Yeah.
And Cody Bellinger is just someone. So he went late in our labor draft. I think Derek Van Riper got him in round 6. When I picked in round 5, I took Grayson Rodriguez. And I took on the 4-5 turn, I took Camilo Duvall and Grayson Rodriguez. At that time, Bellinger was the highest ranked guy on my list. And I didn't take him because he was unsigned. And certain players I would probably take even if they were unsigned. Bellinger, just because he's been so up and down the last few years, I was not prepared to take him on the 4-5 turn if he was going to sit out until, March 10th, March 15th before he signed. I didn't like the idea of someone who had been all over the map the last few years having an abbreviated amount of time to get ready for the season. So anyway, so I passed on him, and so did a lot of other people. I think he'll go back into round 5 now. I could even see him
easily
going in round 4. I could even see him going in round 4 now, because it's not that the landing spot's that amazing. Like the Cubs should have a solid lineup, and it's good enough park to hit in. Like it's not like he joined, the Braves or something, but I think just having him signed, and I know he wasn't signed on the first day of spring training, but I think
Right.
this is plenty of time. Like it's a month for him to get ready. Like he's one of the more volatile assets already, and I didn't like the idea of taking him unsigned compared to the other unsigned players. I didn't like taking him unsigned.
For sure. And, because it really is about, okay, where is he going to be? Because his performance has varied so much. He is still sitting available in in my TGFBI league, where, we are at a snail's pace. We are still in the 4th round. I think there's one or two leagues that are on our pace, but for the most part, we're well behind the pack. It happens. It's gotten better this afternoon, but or this evening, I should say. But I did just take Royce Lewis in the 4th round so we're almost done with the 4th round. So I got that, but Bellinger's still out there. He'll be among the options I'll be looking at here in round 5. That's pick 65. That's pick 65. I will consider it there.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, I think he'll still run. I know he's not in a contract year now, but I think he'll still steal some bases. I don't know if he'll steal as many as he stole last year, but I think he'll still steal some for sure, like double digits, 15, something like that. I think he'll do that. So yeah, I don't know if he'll make it back to you now that he's signed. I think it'll be right around that. I think that will become his landing spot, is like 4 or 5 turn. Round 4 seems to be, and it is in your league as well, like a heavy pitcher round. So I don't think that's going to change. Oh, I guess the only way that'll change will be if in late March, if in main event season, those pitchers start going in round 3. That'll be the only way. But if they go in round 3, then all the Adolis Garcias, Randy Rosarenas, then they'll start going in round 4. Either way, I think Bellinger's going to settle in that 4 or 5 turn vicinity.
It is really interesting to kind of watch different drafts. Like I broadcasted the alternate categories league where we use innings pitched instead of wins, solds, which is saves and holds instead of saves, and it's OBP instead of batting average. The starting and pitching inflation in there was pretty high. We saw 5 pitchers drafted in the 2nd round, which you don't really see in most of these leagues. We saw a lot more in the 3rd and 4th rounds. I feel like Labor actually had more pitchers taken in the 4th round than this draft too in my TGFBI league. It's kind of interesting. So we'll talk more about that league in a second here. But you raised another question in the outline. I think it's really important to bring up here. Is it time to downgrade Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, Matt Chapman, JD Martinez, any other remaining free agents out there?
Yeah, I think the pitchers, like, it's time to start looking at how many innings you have them pitching this year, because I'm sure they're throwing and I'm sure they're ready and they'll hit the ground running when they sign and whatever. But if they don't sign soon, I could totally see the teams that sign them saying that they're not going to be ready to make their initial starts of the season, that they're going to have to leave them behind. Maybe they miss a couple starts. So for example, back in the winter, I projected Blake Snell at maybe even a little optimistic 165 innings. And I think I had Jordan Montgomery about the same. Like, it might make sense for me to downgrade them now to even just 155, like take off a couple starts. But when you do that, and as you know from playing with SGPs, when you do that and then you take away maybe 10, or in Blake Snell's case, maybe 15 strikeouts, maybe you take off a win, like that would push Blake Snell down into a whole other tier of pitchers.
It would.
And Montgomery too. I passed on Montgomery in my Tout Wars draft just yesterday for Chris Bassett, and I'm not in love with Chris Bassett, but he signed, and he's in spring training. And if Montgomery had signed, I would have taken Montgomery. And I thought about being that jerk who lets the 8-hour clock go down, and I did not do that at all.
You're a good man.
An hour. The Montgomery rumors too that are the strongest right now is the Red Sox, and I don't love the Red Sox. I don't love Fenway for a left-handed starter.
Right.
And then the Red Sox are I do think their offense is decent, but I don't think their team's not awesome. I don't love that landing spot for them. So that kind of scared me off. But like I said, if he had signed, I would have taken him over Bassett. I like Montgomery.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah. Part of me is I'm okay with him ramping up a little slowly because he threw so many innings, including the playoffs last year. that I kind of worry a little bit about him being worked a little too hard. So if he scales back a little bit this year, that's fine for performance, but it means you need the innings. The team that, I think it's fine for whatever team signs him, but you need the innings. That's the tricky part.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Like, it'll be fine for him. It's just you're going to have to, if you have to go without him for the first 2 weeks or something, uh, like that hurts. And I know it's like, well, it's the beginning of the year. Most of my team's healthy. Like, I can cover it and whatever. Yeah, you can totally cover it. But when you look at where Blake Snell goes in drafts, like, it just, like I said, it's just a reason to move him down a tier. I'm just looking at some of the pitchers that, like, he kind of goes around, and like whether it's a Logan Gilbert or someone like that, like, it's just maybe a reason to just take one of them ahead of him.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So I should have pulled up ADP before we started this. My bad on that. But looking, I'm going to pull that up. We'll figure out exactly where he's been going lately. I'll do the last 3 weeks. I always kind of like, that's a pretty good time frame there. Jordan Montgomery in the NFBC has been going around pick 162. So it's, right at the 11th round. That's in a 15 teamer. That's a decent enough discount there, I think. I mean, other starting pitchers going in that range: Shane Bieber, Jose Barrios, and Mitch Keller behind him. It's actually kind of an odd pocket. There's not a ton of starters in that.
Gavin Williams, Pavetta, you're right. Once you get down to those guys, like, it would probably be enough for me to take like Barrios ahead of him.
Yeah, me too.
I said I took Bassett ahead of him, who actually goes ahead of him in NFBC ADP, but was available in my draft. I might still take Bieber, and him would be close. Moreover, I guess I just wouldn't take him. And then with Snell, when I look at him, like, I just quickly searched since February 10th, so basically the last 3 weeks, and he was picked 70. Grayson Rodriguez right behind him, Logan Gilbert's right behind him, Bobby Miller's right behind him, Yuri Perez is like a full round behind him. Like, I think I might take those guys. I would take them ahead of Blake Snell now. Zach Eflin is a round behind, is a full round behind him. I think I'd take Eflin now, especially where Snell is, because that's like your ace or your number 2.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I know Jordan Montgomery's probably your number 3, so maybe it's not that big of a difference. But I don't know. I definitely don't want to pitch without my ace or my number 2 at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I pulled up your draft board. If those of you that are streaming live with us, you can follow along. Fred is team 2 in this one here. And you started off with Juan Soto. You have Kevin Gossman. You have Grayson Rodriguez. You have and then you have Bassett in the 10th. So you went with 5 pitchers in your first 10 picks, including 2 relievers. I know we're going to get to that later as well, but let's just start off on that right there. So yeah, it's interesting. You did pass on Bassett at about that range where he goes, and then Montgomery, where did he ultimately end up going?
He went, I think, in the next round. Like, he didn't make it back to me. So I took Bassett on that 10-11 turn with Zach Geloff, but I was only going to take.
He went in the 12th round. He almost went 2 full rounds. There you go.
Actually,
you're
right. He almost did make it back to me. You're right.
12-11. Yeah.
You know what? Our draft hasn't moved fast in the last couple of days, so it feels like he didn't make it close to me, because after he was picked, I still waited a really long time before I picked. But he did actually go. He did go 3 picks before me. He almost made it back to me in round 12, which makes sense. It's about a 1 round discount from his NFBC ADP.
Yep.
Because we're getting into spring training and he's still unsigned. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, you can see maybe Carlos Rodon went ahead of him, just ahead of him, right? Mm-hmm. Shane Bieber did. Christian Javier. Yeah, that's where we're at. Bryce Miller, Hunter Brown. I don't know if I do Bryce Miller, Hunter Brown still. Right. Like I said, though, I like Montgomery, so he's someone who I would probably have a lot of shares of if he was signed.
Yeah. Meanwhile, JD Martinez he's already kind of discounted already because he's a UT only. He's DH only and unsigned. It's harder for him to find a job actually because of that. But he's on average in the last 3 weeks. He's at pick 242. Matt Chapman's even later than that. And I understand why Matt Chapman is. I mean, he hasn't had a good year in the last 3 years. He's had little pockets where, he's been like the batted ball champion for a while but not even for full seasons. I just don't think he's ever been the same since his hip injury.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. And, in our labor draft, Ryan Bloomfield, who's like really good at fantasy baseball, took him in round 18. I think round 18 is fine. But I've been kind of just after watching Chapman here in Toronto, like don't know if physically he has what he needs to be a good hitter anymore.
Yeah.
With him unsigned was just, I didn't have him ranked that high anyways. He's become like a bit of a batting average albatross. And I just feel like I don't really want to take those players, especially if they're not really good. So like I guess he hit 240 last year. Maybe I'm being too hard on him, but that was his highest average in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
So even 240, like the year before was 229, 210 the year before that. I mean, maybe he gets to a team with a really, hitter friendly park and that helps him. But, and then actually Ryan is also the guy who took JD Martinez, and he went so late. He went after pick 300, like round 21 in our labor draft. And I remember having him at the top of my list, and the combination of UT only, and then him not being signed. And he's a trickier one because
Right.
like he needs to be a DH. So how many teams, I feel like he's going to get signed, but like how many, you start looking around there, like how many teams out there want a DH? Like teams like the Pirates aren't going to sign him.
No.
So how many teams out there who are competitive and are going to pay him even on a 1-year deal, like want a DH? I do think he'll find a team. I know the Mets keep getting rumored. I think that one would make a lot of sense. I just don't know if the Mets are willing to spend any more money or not.
Well, the Mets pay 110% tax on any signing any player they sign.
Yep.
Because they're paying the repeater luxury tax. It serves as a salary cap, de facto salary cap in a way.
Yep.
Not necessarily for the Mets and Steve Cohen, but a little bit. I mean, you saw how they sold off instead of trying to just rebuild on the fly. I mean, I should say instead of like retooling. I mean, they're kind of like cooling their heels this season, but they're still going to be paying the luxury tax regardless.
Yeah.
They have so much.
So why? Yeah. So why sign him and pay that tax on it if they? Now you and I talked recently about how they're on paper their roster actually, like on the projection systems, is ranked as like a competitive roster.
Yeah.
To speak in the playoffs. So I mean, they just lost Cody Senga. That may not. I don't know how that play. If they was to be like, oh, forget it, we already weren't that in on this season. That makes it even less in, or does that make them maybe a little more in, where maybe they would look at Martinez or Jordan Montgomery or something and then recover from that injury? But anyways, I think Ryan taking him in round 21, he was the highest ranked guy on my list. So for example, in round 20, I took Alex Verdugo. Martinez at the time was the highest ranked guy left on my list. But when I really looked at him, when it was coming down towards my pick, and like, he's just not going to be in as advantageous of a situation this year as he was last year with the Dodgers. And he's only utility. And I was like, forget it. I'll just take boring Alex Verdugo. I needed an outfielder, and I know he's going to play. So I think Ryan's value on him was really good, but like it's
something I could have considered doing too, because I ultimately have a UT only guy as well in Joey Meneses, and I got him in round 24.
Yeah,
I'll tell you. I had JD in a 12-teamer last year, and I think it's even in the smaller the league, the less likely I want to have him tying up my UT, just because I just want the flexibility. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I've got it backwards. Maybe it's the bigger the league, I don't want to do it because it's just injuries are going to happen. But either way, it's just there's a real cost to tying up a utility spot.
Yeah, for sure. There is. In like you said, like in labor in a deeper league, I think tying it up, especially because it's a league with waivers and it's deeper, like I think that makes sense. Like you just want the hitting, like good hitting, you'll find a way to work around it. So anyways, I think we all could have taken him a couple rounds earlier and it would have made sense. When I just look at hitters that were taken, in the rounds before him, Jose Siri, Pete Crow Armstrong, MJ Melendez, who's no longer catcher eligible, Brent Rooker. Like you could, like JD Martinez has upside over all of these guys.
Of course.
Like I said, though, when it was coming down towards me and I was kind of doing some searches and where do I think he could possibly sign, what makes sense, I just didn't like the Astros, the Dodgers, these teams, the Yankees, none of these teams really made sense. So
by the way, I switched over and now we're showing that labor draft here as well. So we can kind of look at that a little bit too as we're talking. So if you are streaming with us, if you saw us switching grids, that's what happened there. We're going to talk about differing strategies in closers. But first, before we do that, we're going to share a note from our friends at Fantrax. Fantrax is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Coming from another service, Fantrax makes it easy. Fantrax can import any of your current leagues and customize if needed. Fantrax offers the most in-depth player pool in the industry, including minor league players. Do you need a customizable commissioner service for your fantasy league? Fantrax offers more customization than any other platform. Waivers, categories, scoring system, schedule. Fantrax offers custom solutions for all that and more, and it's all free. Sign up for free today and be entered to win an official MLB signed jersey from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Simply go to fantrax.com/RotoWire and sign up today. That's fantrax.com/RotoWire. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. Big thanks to Fantrax for sponsoring all of our draft season podcasts here. Let's talk about differing closer strategies. We'll use our labor draft that we did together as a backdrop for that, and maybe shed some light on that. As you said, that you have a very differing philosophy on how to manage the closer pool than Scott and I do.
Well, I maybe more you than Scott. I'm not sure. Like I was kind of listening to you guys while I was driving yesterday, and I felt like I'll start with this. This was my impression, was that your plan is get one of the good ones and then kind of like fart around after that and see what you can get with for taking shots.
That's exactly what I said. Fart around. No. I do intend. I would prefer to only spend one top 10 round pick on a closer. Yes, that's, and then I'm hoping to find value later on. And whether it's 12 or 14 or 15 or 17, yes, that's how I would like to approach it. I'm about to do the pitching category targets article of finishing that up. I've done all like the initial number crunching. Now you got to write it up and do some analysis actually. But I think if you look at like the correlation between that dominate saves and those who dominate the overall standings, it's not a strong correlation. There's a stronger correlation between ratios, ERA and WHIP, and there's a stronger correlation with wins. There's a stronger correlation on the hitting categories, but for stolen bases, it's one of the ones that you can get by with hitting the 50th, 60th percentile in that category and do fine in the overall standings, or do fine in your league standings.
Okay, yeah. So there's two different things there. You were saying when you were talking about the overall standings, like I'm not in any overalls this year, so that's not a fact. No,
you're not even playing yogurt.
No,
you've never played yogurt, have you?
Never played yogurt. I'm not an big overall guy. I really love just the old fashioned purity of let's take 15 people and see who wins the league.
And include trades, et cetera, et cetera. I get
either or. I don't mind like NFBC satellite leagues and playing for some money in that regard. Like I don't mind that at all. But I've always been even when I've played in the main event, like I find I still end up not really being that interested in the main event. Maybe that's because I've never been in the top 10 or something, but not really being interested in the main event, just being interested in my league. I don't know. I'm just old fashioned that way. I think I just like the old fashioned, like, let's take a group of 12 or 15 and that league is all that matters, not the overall standings and all those things. Just find a way to win that league. So I don't think about the overall component, but I do think about the league component, obviously, and winning your league. But it's actually my concept is more based on the closer pool this year, which I think is deeper than it's been the last few years. I counted 17 closers that I all feel like pretty good about.
Okay.
So it goes down to, if you look in our labor draft, I got Clay Holmes I'm seeing him in round 9. And then in this draft, in round 10, we got into Kenley Jansen and Adbert Alzolay. Now you're starting to lose me at that point. Like, I'm still a little there, but I think if I went to them, I think I might be closer to, that might be even 19 guys. And then it drops off. Then there's this massive, people have talked about this. There's this, you and Scott talked about it. There's this massive gap. Like in our draft, those guys went in round 10. And I don't see another closer till Robert Stevenson in round 13, and then Alex Lang in round 14, Jose Leclerc in round 14. So so from round 10 to round 13, there aren't any closers in that draft. In my Tout Wars draft, the closers hung around a lot longer, which I thought was interesting for a draft and hold, because you're not going to be able to find saves on the waiver wire. But the big run in this league, it's almost like we all silently agreed to not get crazy about closers, because the big run was in rounds 8 and 9 in that league. And I think and I tweeted about it because I just thought people would find it interesting that we went Bednar and Fairbanks, then a little bit of a break, a few picks, and then Muñoz, one pick break, and then here we go: Romano, Kimbrel, Sewald, Helsley, Scott, Phillips, Clay Holmes, one pick break, Alzolay, one pick break, Lang, two picks break, Jansen, and then there goes,
And I
like,
don't feel comfortable at all about Jansen. And
no.
I don't feel comfortable about Kimbrel either. He's
I'm a
not
Kimbrel apologist, so he's kind of one
okay.
of my guys.
Fair enough.
I just really like with Kimbrel. If you go back and read so I understand that Kimbrel, like I understand the risks with Kimbrel. I just
Sure.
like the Orioles are awesome. Like they're really one of the better teams in baseball. They should generate plenty of save chances. Their park is a good park to pitch in. And when they signed him, and I can go back obviously now and still and read the articles. Like when they signed him, they were very clear. Like we're signing our closer. Like it
Mhm.
wasn't like he's a high leverage guy. We
Right,
can
right.
mix and match. It was like Craig Kimbrel has a million career saves. He's the most experienced closer in baseball. Like this guy is our closer. We've got a closer for 1 year while Felix Bautista heals from his injury. That's what this guy's here to do. Save games for the 1 year. If he could just do what he did last year, 3.26 ERA, 104 WHIP. I think he'll get a ton of saves in Baltimore.
Yeah, because Baltimore's going to be good, right?
He'll blow the odd save, and he also
Yeah.
strikes a lot of batters out. He got 94 strikeouts last year.
Yeah.
The year before he only 72, but the year before that he got 100 strikeouts and a 2.26 ERA and a 0.91 WHIP in 2021. So like 2022 with the Dodgers was like just okay. 3.75 ERA, 1.32 WHIP. Not great, not horrible, but not great. I think if he's just kind of like a low to mid threes ERA, I think he'll just hold the job and blow a few saves, but end up with 30 something saves.
I see the case for that. And Yennier Cano exists, but he actually struggled a little bit when he took over after
Yep.
Bautista got hurt. I just have a built-in bias against Kimbrel. I think I've seen him lose the job too many times. I've seen him when he loses, and it's whenever he loses command of the strike zone and teams just take walks against him. He's one of those guys that I think if you just roster him, don't watch him pitch and accept the results, you're fine. But the second you start watching him pitch, you're just like, this is misery because
That may be my plan.
he walks the tightrope act. He'll walk two guys on and then get out of it. He still has a low whip because nobody can hit that Frisbee. He just, he can't control it sometimes.
Maybe the park in Baltimore helps him escape some of those. Like he gave up 10 home runs last year, which is unusual. It's a career high. But he's pitching for Philly. Maybe the park in Baltimore helps him a little bit with that. I don't know. I mean, he was 5 road home runs last year. But one of the underrated things about Kimbrel too, and maybe this will be the kiss of death, and I'm jinxing him right now, but he hasn't been on the IL since 2019. So in the world of pitching, like when I was comparing him to like Pete Fairbanks, Ryan Helsley, etc., like I feel like the odds of those guys going on the IL this year is really high. They go on the IL every year.
Yeah.
So Kimbrel hasn't gone on the IL in the last 4 years.
So do you feel like you differ from us because you want two closers of those 17?
Okay. Yeah. So getting back to where we started with this. So I don't want any of the first few closers, even though I took one in labor. So I regretted that. That was kind of my first draft of the year, and we came up to the turn, and it was part of Bellinger being unsigned. I didn't really like the hitters on the turn, and then I had 3 hitters already. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take pitching on the turn, but then I didn't totally love the starters on the turn. And then I took Grayson Rodriguez on the turn, which I'm fine with, but I didn't really love the other guys. Like Eflin went on the turn, which I think is fine. Like, I think he's good, but I don't know, it just felt aggressive for round 4. Logan Gilbert and Framber Valdez went right after him in round 4. So I didn't love the idea of taking 2 of them. So I took Camilo Duvall, and that was kind of when the draft was done. I was like, I wish I had just waited 5 rounds and taken Clay Holmes, or waited 4 rounds and taken Clay Holmes, or something like that. Someone like that. Or
sure.
Anyway, so what I would like to do, I think, in an ideal world, is let about 10 closers come off the board, then double tap them, and then I'm done. And I'm still going to obviously mine for saves and stuff later. So in Tout Wars, what I did is I took Muñoz and I took Kimbrel in rounds 8 and 9. The rounds don't really matter as much because it just depends when your league decides to run. I think this year I don't feel that much better about Emmanuel Clase or Jordan Romano or these ones who go earlier than I do about the guys who go later. So I think I'd rather, like, I get that Devin Williams is good and Edwin Diaz could be really good if he's fine. He didn't pitch last year, so that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So I get that Josh Hader is good. I wonder sometimes if the Astros will just throw a few saves Ryan Presley's way to kind of be nice about the fact he's on their team and give him half a dozen saves. Like, still, I think Hader still gets 30, but maybe he doesn't get 40. I love Yohan Duran. I think he may be the best reliever in baseball, but the Twins kind of mix and match sometimes a little bit.
That's true.
He may be
Less
more
so
like
last year
50.
than the year before, but
Yeah.
yeah, Rocco Baldelli, I mean, he's from the
Yep.
Kevin Cash tree. I mean,
So maybe that gets Duran 32 saves instead of 38 or
Yeah.
something like that. I still think he's awesome. I have him ranked, I think, as maybe my second highest reliever. I think he's great, but I think I'd rather leave all of those guys and pick other players in that range and then wait till we get to the Sewald, Iglesias, Kimbrel, Helsley, Tanner Scott, all of them, and just take two. Evan Phillips. I'm getting more comfortable with Evan Phillips. I haven't taken him yet, but I'm feeling better about that as time goes on.
the news on him has been good where
Yeah.
he, Roberts even affirmatively said he's going to be the primary guy.
Yeah.
And the fact that they just haven't signed any of those, they dodged the Hader bullet. He dodged the Hader bullet, for instance.
Yep. Yep. After I took Kimbrel, the one who went after, several closers obviously went right after him. Phillips is the one who I was probably the most like, oh, I wish I had just taken the better pitcher and taken Phillips and get a few less saves. And maybe I don't. Maybe I get just as many or more saves. I kind of wish that I had taken Phillips. But anyways, overall, my plan is I think I wait. I take two out of that group, and then I'm not messing around with Alex Lang and Robert.
That feels like a shot.
All those. Oh wait, you did take him. Well, you took him in round 14, which I think is appropriate. But
yeah.
But I think I'd rather stay out of that and go up a few more rounds and just take Clay Holmes. So, for example, you could have taken Clay Holmes instead of Anthony Volpe. I think maybe I would rather do that. And then instead of where you took Alex Lang, when you took Alex Lang, you took Yoshida right after that. Edward Julian. I'm not a big Edward Julian guy. I don't know.
I like Julian enough.
He doesn't hit lefties, so I'm a little.
He hasn't had much of a chance. He hasn't had much of a chance to either, which
No.
I mean, it's kind of like chicken and egg sort of thing.
Yeah.
The fact is they even platooned him in the minors a little bit, which is kind of, it's disturbing a little bit.
I think I'd rather just, I think Volpe is a really exciting player that you took, but I think I might just rather take Clay Holmes and then instead of Lang, I just take some hitter, whatever. I took James Outman one pick ahead of that. Brandon Nimmo went a few picks ahead of that. Tyler O'Neill a few picks ahead of that. Like I think
all those were unfortunate picks, by the way, because at that point in the draft, I had one outfielder, and so I was looking to kind of get outfielders. But I wanted Nimmo, I wanted O'Neill, I wanted Outman, I wanted Taylor Ward.
I think I'd rather just live in that group. Stephen Kwan went right after you took Lang.
I don't care about Stephen Kwan. That's fine.
Not feeling him.
Well, you need so much power. And the thing is, Kwan, regressed a little bit in that last year. I think he had five. The Indians projected the Guardians projected starting outfield has like 11 combined homers last year. Kwan, I mean, no, it's not. That's not hyperbole. That's actual fact. It's Brennan, Kwan, and who's the center fielder? Just
Miles Straw.
I'm grasping at straws there. Sorry,
they're talking about Florial maybe being ahead of him as being the center fielder, Estevan Florial. But either way,
he's still my beating heart.
Either way, it's not good. Yeah. Too bad JD Martinez can't play the outfield. He'd be a great fit for that team.
Yeah. Question about seeing the draft grid here. Where's Jordan? He's on team 15. Sorry, I didn't, trying to squeeze it all in there on one. So I can either show the round or I can show team 15, which is Paul Spohr. So screw Paul. No, just kidding. I like Paul a lot. He's a good human being. So he's at 115 in this draft here. So that answering the question there, Nico, as far as that goes. Yeah, fair. I mean, I don't think you might not, it's not a bad way to go about doing it. I mean, there's so many different ways to kind of piece together your draft. Do you feel comfortable, going dumpster diving for saves? Do you feel comfortable only having 8 points in saves? Well, if you do, or less even, if you do, then that's fine, especially in a standalone league. In an overall contest, maybe it's a little bit different, but I just feel like I committed too many resources to relief pitchers last year and not enough to starting pitchers. So that's one thing I wanted to try to correct this year.
Yeah, I can see that. And that's where I'm trying to manage it. And that's why I didn't like my Duvall pick. Like, I'm trying to manage the resources I want to. So that's why I'm going to stay out of the first 8 or 10 to go off the board.
Mhm.
Because I don't want to have to spend the pick on Devin Williams and, spend another pick on Alexis Diaz. Like, I think that feels like too much to me. Um,
Mhm.
so that's why I'm trying to just let the first few go off the board.
Fair.
And the strategy I have with closers is actually the same it's weird. Some of my strategies with the way the rules are evolving in baseball, I feel like are strategies I used 10 years ago or 12 years ago, or maybe even 15 years ago. Like, I feel like this closer strategy was one that I used 10 or 15 years ago when there were more reliable closers and more teams just put their best pitcher in that's
Yeah.
the other thing about these pitchers. It's not just teams having closers. It's that a lot of these pitchers are the best reliever on their team. So it's not just that the teams are settling on a guy. So they're not doing bullpen by committee. They're actually picking the guy who we would pick, like Yohan Duran. Like, they're for all this high leverage. Oh, well, maybe we'll use them in the seventh sometimes. Like, we're seeing more getting back to not like totally like it used to be, but we're seeing more where teams are actually using their best reliever in the
Yeah.
ninth inning. And some of the teams, I said, like, that there's maybe, if you wanted to count Kenley Jansen and Adbert Alzolay is a good pitcher. He just has some injury concerns, but then there's close to 20. Well, the remaining teams, some of those teams are not going to, like, the Rockies are not going to get us a viable reliever. Maybe it's almost certainly they're not. I
Yeah.
feel like they're not going to get us.
That was a question that was brought up in the chat. Let's see if I can track that down. But the question, asking about, oh, here we go. Goes, how do you guys, Chad TTV says, how do you guys feel about the Rockies closer, whomever that ends up being? Is it worth a shot taking on one of them in a non-draft and hold since they are going undrafted to avoid the fab cost? My answer is always no. I do not. They're on my don't fly list. I don't even bother. I don't even. It's because it's just there's too much damage. There are years that it's cost me. Like Daniel Bard 2 years ago was great. And he was a fab pickup for everyone, though, but he was great. There's been other years, but the's been so many years where even if they get the saves, they crush your ratios. It's just not worth it to me. I firmly avoid them.
So ever since the Houston Street era, that's about the last time I can remember actually being like, sure, I'll take up the Rockies closer. But back then, the Rockies were pretty good, and Houston Street was kind of an established closer. So, and that was a long time ago. So, yeah, I'm kind of out. They're one of the only teams though that I'm out on. Like I don't mind. Again, it's not my plan, but if someone wants to spend later picks on Finnegan or Harvey or the Texas guys, or like even the even the Royals, even Will Smith, like I can get behind it late enough in a draft. The Rockies are the one team where I think I'm like completely out no matter what. Even if the Rockies named a closer, I don't think I would draft them.
Yeah.
Oh, the White Sox, that would maybe be the other one where
Not the A's. You're all over Mason Miller.
no, I don't really want to get in. The A's would be low for me, but the fact that Mason Miller is really talented means that at some point I would take him.
Mhm.
It won't be my plan this year, and I'll probably have no shares. But like Mason Miller, it's worth the possibility at least. Like, there's a chance that Mason Miller's like for 1 year a good closer, and then they move him back into the rotation. So, but there's another team like if they don't end up really settling on Mason Miller, we may not really get a useful reliever from the A's. I mentioned the
Right.
Royals just a minute ago. Like, we'll see what happens with Will
I still
Smith.
like MacArthur there. Even
Yeah,
though
I
they
still
brought
think
in
Will
two
Smith gets
relievers now.
yeah, I think Will Smith gets the first ones, maybe, and we'll just and then you just see
Nah.
where it goes. But and then the White Sox is the other one that's, I'd say for me it's the Rockies are the worst, then the White Sox, then probably then the Royals or
Yeah.
now they're all getting
So
jumbled in
you
my head,
for
or the
the
A's.
I think for the White Sox, I think Brebbia begins the year as the closer, but probably doesn't finish it. It could be Prelander Baroa. It could be others. I don't know. Maybe he does. Maybe he's fine, but they win 57 games, so it doesn't matter. That's the thing. I'm kind of like, that's where I'm at. But Baroa, I mean, has great stuff. Uncle Ted keeps on pumping him up every single one of our podcasts here. Thanks. I see you, Ted. But at the same time, he's got command issues and he's just on a bad team. I think that's the thing. I think so many times we think, oh, this guy should be the closer. We want to will it to happen, and it just doesn't happen, or the team is so bad that it doesn't really matter. And that's why I probably avoid the White Sox too, and I avoid the A's and the Rockies. But then you're drafting from a 2017 pool. And
Yeah.
so you better prioritize a little bit more there. And so you just have to know, okay, well, I've got fewer to choose from than others.
That's right. And when you're drafting from a 27 or maybe even 25 team pool, and I just said that about 20 of them, almost 20 of them are going by the end of round 10, then you better figure, like, if you're not going to get in on that, then you better really like Jose Alvarado or Jose Leclerc or someone like that. You better have found one in that group that
I like
you're
that
like,
you went with someone other than my precious Alex Lang. I
Alex
appreciate
Lang,
that.
there's another one. You better find one of them who you really believe in. Or Kyle Finnegan. I don't totally hate Kyle Finnegan.
Yes, you do.
I
You're a
know
hater.
Hunter Harvey's a better pitcher,
Mhm.
but I really broke down their, save usage last year, and Harvey kind of stole the job in the first half of the season at one point, and then Finnegan came back and got almost all their saves in the second half. He's not a really good reliever, but he was their closer to finish the season. We'll see what they decide to do. I think everybody knows Harvey's the better pitcher, but I think Harvey got 2 saves in the second half and Finnegan got like 17. So like they were pretty firmly on Finnegan at the end of the year. So I don't think Finnegan's a terrible pick where he goes. Anyways, I think my plan
Harvey's the
this
better
year,
pitcher, though. There's no doubt
absolutely,
about that.
absolutely. It just
Yeah.
doesn't mean he'll get saves. He was the better pitcher last year, and the Nationals aren't going to make the playoffs or
Yeah,
anywhere
they're
close to
pretty
it. So
they're pretty crappy still. I think
it's
they're
not
better
like
than
their
last
season
year,
rests
but
on who they pick.
yeah. Finnegan helped people out a lot because he cost you nothing. But he also, he might not have rostered all of his saves because he got
Yeah, you
rocked a couple of
might have
times.
dropped him for sure.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then, the Harvey got saves and then didn't and all that. So you may not have rostered all of Finnegan's saves. That's the only problem about that. All right. That's enough saves talk.
Sure. We
we
did
got
that.
more
Yes,
of that
you did that with Scott a couple of days ago.
We do it all the time, and
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
fascinating, and we'll
sure.
keep going to it. It's flypaper for us here.
Yeah.
We're on the Blue Wire Network. We're going to talk talk about stolen bases. Blip, blip, spit it out, Jeff. But before we do that, quick moment for our ads on the Blue Wire Network. All right. Thank you for your patience there. For those of you streaming live or listening on wherever you get your podcasts, we appreciate Blue Wire for hosting all of our podcasts here. All right. We talked, you mentioned the outline that I did a category targets article for hitting, and it's just eye opening how many stolen bases we needed to hit the 80th percentile, 187. And last year, 2 years ago, the 20th percentile, or last year's 20th percentile would have been more than the 80th percentile the year before. That's how big of a jump it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy. I think Scott White, I saw him put out an article a few weeks ago that I think last year was the most steals in baseball since 1987. Do I have that stat right? I think it was something like that. It was the most steals since 1987. So that stat really caught my eye just because that's before I started playing fantasy, and pretty much all of us started playing fantasy. So I was like, really, like it was the most steals of my fantasy career. Like and therefore the highest benchmark of what you needed. Like you said, I have your article up now, 187,
Yep.
and then 70th percentile, 176. So therefore maybe the most steals you've needed of my fantasy career. So it's a huge difference. It's really changed the weighting that I've given steals this year. Like I've devalued them a lot. And then I've also noticed, and I'm sure you've noticed the same thing, like and I'm loving this. Like we're past the era where you had to take Whit Merrifield in the third round because you just had to get your 30 steals early because we were all just trending towards 100 steals or 110 steals. So you're like, well, I got Whit Merrifield. I know he kind of sucks, but I got 30 steals and he'll hit 280. So that's something.
That's another guy you just besmirched from my labor team, by the way. That was after our pod, though. So
I'm sure you didn't have to use a third round pick. I think
Negative.
I used a third round pick on Whit Merrifield in labor like 2 years ago.
Yep, I got him in the 18th this time. Yep.
Yeah, and it's obviously a lot has changed with Merrifield, his role and everything else. But anyways, that was the whole thing. It's actually, I find it so refreshing. Like I've been moving through the middle rounds, like rounds like 11, 12, that area in the Tout Wars draft, and just to be able to see guys on my list who I project to get 20 and 25 steals in round 10 or 11, and they're not even just steal guys. Zach Geloff, I took Lane Thomas. I thought about I was close to taking Chas McCormick and TJ Friedel. I think I took Friedel in our labor draft. Like to see these guys in the middle rounds who can get you 20 something steals and can hit 15 or 20 home runs, and they don't hit 230 either. It's just refreshing to not have to chase steals like at all times in these ridiculous ways. And one of the things, like, I think I've said this on the podcast many times, like, I don't love it when fantasy sports like massively deviate from the real game. And I never enjoyed how we were like artificially valuing. We still probably care too much about steals compared to what real teams care about them. We probably care in fantasy too much about them. But now seeing these guys, like, it's not like you have to take these not very good players just because they steal bases in the early rounds. I find it way better. We're back to a little more gauging players by how good they truly are.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. And to that point, like, I still want to get steals early. It's just so I don't have to get the estuary Ruizes of the world. I don't want the guys that aren't that very good at hitting, but they can run like the wind. I don't want Billy Hamilton. I don't want Malik Smith, because those guys can just lose their job. They can be out of baseball quickly sometimes. It's just it's that extreme. So I want to get guys that can hit.
Yes, but what's interesting when you look at this year's player pool is there's Ruiz for sure, but there aren't many Ruizes. So when you look at last year's steals leaders, like, Ruiz sticks out for sure. It's a bad hitter who, who had a good steals season, but Acuna is obviously awesome. Corbin Carroll was third. Bobby Witt was fourth. Like, these are like some of the best young players in baseball. CJ Abrams is way up there. He's a little bit of an old fashioned, like, like, he's just there for the steals a little bit. He hit 18 home runs last year.
So. Yeah, if he has 18 homers and with those steals, that's a huge win.
Yeah,
and you still see it in the reflected in the draft price. I'm in TGFBI right now, and he goes in the 4th round. A guy like that used to go in the 2nd round because of how many stolen bases he had, and he's not a 0 in power.
That's right. And then when I look at the other hitters, like Nico Horner was 6th in steals. Nico Horner's not a power hitter, but he always hits like 280. Like he's a good, and he hits high in the lineup now for the Cubs. He scored 98 runs last year. Like, it's a good overall fantasy player, a little light in power, but Ha-Seong Kim was one of last year's breakout players. He's up there. Julio Rodriguez, Ellie De La Cruz. Like, there's lots of players who are among the steals leaders. And then after that, there's just this massive pile of players who all got 25 to 30 steals. And there's lots of good players in that list. So I love how you can attack steals now throughout your draft. In labor, I was very, like, because I started with Corbin Carroll, like, I'm kind of all or nothing on some, and I almost drafted Nico Horner. I didn't end up doing that, but he was kind of in my playbook as a possibility. I didn't like the idea of having 2 of them in the first 5 rounds, like 2 guys who are big time base stealers, but because I felt like it would limit my options later, where I wouldn't be able to value steals as much.
But look what you did the 10th and 11th and the 14th. You've got Chas McCormick, TJ Friedel, and James Outman. All of those guys can run.
Yeah,
get you like 20 stunk.
Yeah, 15, 20 steal guys. And then I like actually the way I've built my Tout Wars steals better, where I don't have a Corbin Carroll, but I've just chipped away the whole time. Like, I've got Jose Altuve, he'll get me 15 steals. Even Juan Soto in a contract year probably gets you 10. Paul Goldschmidt will get you 10 from first base or something like it. Ha-Seong Kim will get you 30 something. Like, just chip away all the way. I have Lane Thomas, Zach Geloff. There's maybe 40 steals between those 2 players. So Lars Nootbaar got 11 last year. I just took him in round 13. Like, I don't mind that plan where you just chip away. But either way, like you said, now you have to get to about 170 or 180. And I think maybe this year you're going to have to get higher. It's just that, like, we're not projecting for it. I think this year you may have to get 200 to get. I think steals are going to go up a little bit more. But when they go up a little bit more, like, it's not like we're all going to be left behind. It's just going to mean that a few of these guys, maybe instead of Zach Geloff getting the 24 or something I haven't projected for, he gets 30. And, a few other guys do the same kind of thing. They just run a little bit more than we thought.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. So
I don't think it's going to be like someone gets 90 or something like that, unless it's Ruiz.
Yeah. I wonder, though, are teams going to adjust? Are they going to find better ways to hold the runner on? Are they going to throw more like pickoffs from the catcher? Is the catcher going to throw down to first more often? I think they already are a little bit. I got to find the data on that there. Or are they going to do the crunch the data and say, you know what? Stolen bases aren't really hurting us that much. It's everything else that's that's the one thing I'm curious to see teams' reactions there about that. The other thing is someday, and it's probably coming soon, maybe next year, maybe the year after that, we're going to get robot umpires for strike zone. And you're already seeing it in the minor leagues.
Mm-hmm.
And that means you're going to spend less time pitch framing and more time trying to maybe, getting release times quicker.
Yeah, for sure. It may change actually what you look for in a catcher, what teams, right, look for in a catcher. If you ever get robot umpires, it'll change. You won't care about that when you're assessing the skills of your catcher. It'll be more about some of those other things like release time and arm strength and things like that. But for now, I believe the minor league data suggested that it takes 2 years for the steals to go up. They go up a lot the first year and then they go up another little bit the second year. So I think we could see that. I also looked at a lot of the base stealers. If you break them down by halves, a lot of them ran more in the second half. Not a lot more, but a little bit more in the second half. As I was looking at a lot of base stealers and, how were his steals distributed? Did he just run a lot one month or does he I like to look at that when I'm ranking or when I'm projecting players, was there some outlier or the consistent producer? A lot of them stole bases just a little more in the second half, just maybe at a 15% more or something like that. But that'll add up if that were to continue.
It would.
Yeah.
Let's move on to some news and notes. Starting off with Joe Musgrove, our putative early opening day starter in Korea for the Padres, has had 2 spring starts and hasn't got out of the first inning in either of them. How worried are you?
I'd say I'm not. I will. I guess I'm worried enough that I don't have any shares yet. I'm worried enough that I'm going to monitor his next start. And most pitchers as good as Joe Musgrove, I'm not really paying attention to their next spring start. But I guess I'm worried enough that I will pay attention. He should be starting somewhere around the weekend. I will just make a note of how that start goes. Are you more worried than I am?
I'm worried because of how he finished the year last year. He was hurt at the end of the year last year. He was kind of hurt all season long. It was kind of a lost year.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The team context isn't great. They trade away Soto. They lost a bunch of free agents. So I don't know.
You're right. Shoulder injury in the second half, and then comes out in the spring and stinks. Maybe I should be a little more worried.
Yeah. So I am a little worried. I don't have them yet anywhere. It's early. I have a lot of drafts. I'm doing the Beat Jeff Erickson draft, which is a 12-teamer on Monday. I got to set the time for that, and then it will post it and get people to sign up for that. But just a heads up that that's coming. But maybe I'll have him in some leagues. But honestly, where he goes, I've been comfortable saying, okay, give me Cole Reagans over Musgrove every time.
Okay.
Give me Justin Steele over Joe Musgrove every time.
Okay. So I have him projected ahead of both of those players, but maybe I'm giving him too many innings. I don't know. The thing about
Tanner Bybee over him too, by the way. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the thing about Joe Musgrove is in the last few years, when he pitches, he always has pitched well. So it's just a matter, I guess, of whether he's healthy or not. It's not like he's had any years recently where he's been pitching but ineffective.
Yeah.
They say everything's fine with him, so I think I'm just giving him a free pass. In my Tout Wars draft, he went 7.4, which is a little bit later, but not much, but a little bit later. And that was after the first start. I remember when he went, that was after he had the really bad first start. He did go after Cole Reagans. He did go before Justin Steele. I didn't take him. I picked a couple picks before that and just didn't take a pitcher. And I remember looking at him and it did pop in my head, how poorly he had pitched the first time out. And then, I don't know. I could see him falling a little bit, and I don't know, one good start and probably he'll be right back where he was. I felt like he was more like a 6th round pick.
Yeah.
That's where people were valuing him.
I'm trying to, he went in the 6th round in labor.
I think that's where he is in most drafts. That's his ADP the last few weeks.
Yeah. He went ahead of Yuri Perez. He went ahead of, you took Jesus Luzardo. He went ahead of a bunch of closers that round. Oh, I'm definitely not paying that.
You're not in him for that, eh? He's been really good. The 3 years with the Padres, 318, 293, 305. The whips, 108, 108, 114. He's been really good with them.
Yeah, I know.
He just missed the last half of last season.
Yeah, and it's a shoulder.
Yeah, I know. So you're right. So I'm kind of probably, in my mind, I'm probably docking him a round or two until I see a good spring start or two.
Yeah.
But then if I see those, I'll probably put him back up.
So I'll be the amateur and just say I'm really worried.
Okay.
We'll move on. Walker Buehler going to face hitters tomorrow. How many innings will he throw is the question you asked me. I'm going to make you answer your own question on this one. How many innings do you have him
Great.
for?
Great, because I was really thinking you'd help me out with my draft
Yeah.
prep by telling
Sorry.
me. I have him at 135 right now.
I'm trying to see how many do I have him for. But let's see here. Walker Buehler. I know I put the. I mean, because the problem is we know he's not pitching until May. So you're already
Yeah.
taking a month out of. I got him for 126.
Yeah. So 135 feels a little aggressive, but at the same time, we never put in. If you depending how you're doing your SGPs, we don't usually really put in replacement level value. So
Mhm.
sometimes I don't mind being a little high because obviously during April he's going to sit on my bench, kind of annoying, but I'm going to be able to use someone else in his roster spot for the entirety of April. It's not like I'm not going to get screwed over where he's in my lineup and he's not pitching, and then he'll be back, and then hopefully he'll be helpful. It's also a matter of what kind of ratios do you project for him, like how effective is he. But
Yeah. What do you have for him?
so right now I have a 3.6 ERA and a 1.17 WHIP.
I am the outlier here because I know that like Ariel for ATC's got him at 394, 120. I've got him at 3 and 110. Three strikes me as overly optimistic, and I might adjust accordingly after the pod today. But I mean, just 2021, he had a 247 and a 097. I mean,
Yep.
that's the most innings he had on that. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, like in a 10-team league, I'm definitely taking him because I can write it out with the replacement
Yep.
level pitchers a lot
Yep.
better. I can just stash them, even if it's a no IR league, it's a little tougher. But even then, I'm writing it out because the upside's so high. In a 15-team leaguer, I'm probably downgrading him more because it's just replacement value is just not as good. And you say we're not including replacement value. Sometimes that's bad replacement value.
Yeah, well, it might end up being with this current starting pitcher market. I think replacement value for him in April for me might just be a good middle reliever, and I just take the four strikeouts a week or whatever, 3 innings a week, and but whatever that for 4 or 5 weeks is something. It's not nothing. Maybe you get one win probably out of that or something, but it's not nothing. But the question on Buehler, yeah, like you said, like the innings is part of the question. The question is like when he comes back. He has a career 3.02 ERA. Like, how close is he to that right away?
Right.
I've tacked on basically half a run onto
Yeah.
that, and then therefore also tacked on a bit of a whip, just saying that he's not going to be maybe.
That's probably the smart play. That's
what he
probably
was.
the wise play, and that's why I probably will adjust Buehler down a little bit.
Do you know where do you have him in your starters? I don't know if you have that quickly in front of you, but is he like I think I have him around 43rd or so, 44th or something like that among my starting pitchers.
Let me tell you, I'm pulling it up right now, but
so like a low end 3, high end 4.
I've got them in the 30s, like 35ish.
Okay. Yeah.
So
So it's
yeah,
like
but I might after my adjustment, that's going to go down a little bit, but still.
Yeah.
And the thing is, his ratios are going to probably be higher, but he's also like going to have like the best run support in the league too.
Mm-hmm.
So
and his ratios, they may not be higher. Like I'm being a little cautious and saying they will be higher.
Yeah.
There is also a scenario where he comes back and he's not that effective right away, and his ERA is 4. So like there's that too. But if you're going to bet on someone, right, the Dodgers are right up there with the Rays or something on teams you would bet on to have their pitchers find success. So
right, exactly.
Beyond the run support, just like as far as what their actual ratios are. So
and it's not like Buehler was like this guy that's going through like this. Oh, he's been terrible. He's just coming back from an injury. It's not just an injury; it's his second Tommy John. So it's hard.
But like you said, he struggled that last season in the 12 starts before he went onto the IL. But other than that, in his career, every year was good.
That I was just going to say that's got to be related too. The struggles with the injury.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, you can almost. I feel like you can kind of throw it out.
Yeah. Paulie in the chat asked a question that was on our outline. Should we get excited about Chris Sale's 2 innings with 4 Ks? It was the Pirates, but it was their starters for the most part there. How excited are you about what Chris Sale did today?
I haven't moved him anywhere yet. Like as far as on my list, I haven't moved him anywhere yet. My problem with Chris Sale right now is he's on my projections, he's being held in check by his innings. So
sure,
I've got him at 100. This is another one we can talk about projections. So I have him at 140, which would be the most innings he's thrown since 2019. And in 2019, he threw 147, so a little more than 140, but not a lot more. 2018, he threw 158. Like, he hasn't thrown 160 since way back in 2017. So I put him at 140, which is kind of saying he's going to stay pretty healthy, but maybe absorb like a month on the IL or something at some point. The thing is we know that's probably not what's going to happen. Like, it could, but he could also be 175, or he could be like 70.
Sure.
I kind of split the difference. So I put him at 140 with a good strikeout rate, with solid ratios. And for me, that puts him, he comes in right around like around the 35 range, 30 to 35 range on my rankings. That's been enough for so far in my drafts for me to almost draft him, but not draft him. That seems to be what keeps happening. He gets right up to the top of my queue. And if it's like not my pick, then I don't end up getting him. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
yeah. So I don't know. I thought I was going to have a bunch of Chris Sale, but until I boost that, if I boosted that 140 innings to 155, he would move up several spots in my rankings, and I would probably end up drafting him. But I don't know if I'm going to do that. I don't know if there's anything in spring training he can do to get me to change the 140 innings.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Well, I've got him at 120, so
right. So I feel like 140 with a good strikeout rate is actually fairly aggressive.
Yeah.
So I just don't know where I can go from there to move him up. And I don't think I can move him. If you have him at 140, you also can't project a really high win total. Like, he's on the Braves. He can get some wins, but like, even on the Braves, like 140 innings is going to get you like 10 wins, something like that, probably.
Yeah.
Um,
So 120 and 8 is what I've got him at right now. My ratios are 420 and a 1.167.
so
A lot
I'm
of
better.
strikeouts though.
I'm actually better than you across the board, and still haven't
it
drafted him.
follows. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't drafted him. Like, I have him, and I have him like kind of around some guys like Sonny Gray, Michael King. I would take him like right in with that group. I just haven't. That group's been going off the board like about a round before I'm ready to pick them. If I put him up in the next group, I would totally draft him. But I don't think there's anything he can do in spring training to make me either lower that ERA projection to the low threes. I don't think I'm going to do that based on spring training results, and I don't think he can change my innings pitch projection, at least not much. Maybe I'll just want shares of him later and just do it.
And I think there's,
but
and there's more room for me to improve him, and so maybe I will. I think, and almost certainly I probably will, because I'm currently not within a parsec of drafting
for
him.
you at 120. I think if he's healthy during spring, I think you could for sure push that up. And then
I could go to 140, and we'd see what happens.
And you could change. Your ratios are such with him that if he pitches well in the spring, you can improve those ratios.
That's my point. Yeah, there's room to grow.
Yeah.
On the flip side, Alek Manoah, another terrible outing, losing control. He showed up to camp in better shape this year. And now, there is some quiet optimism, like the Jays are taking him off the trade market here. They're taking him off the table. Yeah. Today was rough.
Awful. I took him in our labor league too, but I didn't take him with like a primary pick. Like, I took him kind of right around your last pitcher, your bench spot, like top bench, ninth pitcher, somewhere like that. So, like a dart throw in the round 20 somethings, I'd be comfortable cutting him. If my plan with him when I took him was just, he's not going in my lineup like in April, maybe late April if he was pitching well, but he's not going to my lineup for a few weeks, and we'll just see what happens. If he has many more starts like today, like he hit 3 batters today, like if he has many more starts like today, forget about whether he's in my lineup or not in April. He won't be in the Jays lineup in April.
No. And so, they have the depth. They're prepared for that more this year. So yeah, I'm genuinely concerned. I'm just concerned. I'm concerned for him, because it seems like, I think the mental game is something that's a real, a real and powerful thing with him. And, you never like to see somebody struggle in that respect.
That's right.
So
he was never, I was going to say about Manoah, like he was always, those first 2 seasons when he did so well, he was not a great bat misser. And he was always someone whose ERA was beating his FIP by like a full run or half a run. And so he was probably pitching over his skis, but pitching even at his skis was like, you were still like, oh, okay, well, Alek Manoah is not an ace, but he is like a mid threes, high threes type pitcher. He's fine. Like, he could be a mid-rotation, really nice mid-rotation starter in the majors. But what's happened is he's just completely lost it. And to see him come out and walk batters and hit batters and all these things in his first spring training game is I thought it was actually almost like bizarre.
Well, and remember when he got sent down, he
Yep.
had wildly varying outings. Like he had
Yep.
an outing like that when his first, like they sent him all the way down. They gave him the Halliday send down.
Yep.
Uh, and his first game back, he was awful, like really awful, like getting cuffed around by rookie level hitters. And
Yep.
then like 2 starts later, he's dominating AAA. It's like it was really bizarre. So
Mhm.
I don't know what to make out of him. And if I don't know what to make out of him, I'm just not going to draft him.
I think I might have got there already, but 1 week too late as far as for my labor team.
Yeah.
So I mean, the upside when I looked at him in our labor draft, and like I said, it was I think around 23 or something, and I was like, you know what, a lot of round 23 guys don't stick anyways. At
Right.
least this is a guy who still has a career 3.32 ERA. Like the upside of him would be going into spring training is maybe he figures it out and he's
Yeah.
maybe not 2022 Manoah, but maybe he's pretty good. But I don't know. Like it didn't take long for me to feel like I'm going to jump right back off that bandwagon. I would not draft him like right now in a 30 in a 30 round draft. I guess a 15 team league. I guess I would still, even after that start, I'll still take him. But now it's like round 29, round 30.
I think because I lived that experience last year on some of my rosters, I'm
Hmm.
just I don't feel it, but he was so good for me 2 years ago. I don't feel like he owes me. I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
thank you for the good times. Let's forget about the bad times and move on. And if he, and good for him if he recovers, and if he rebounds, he very easily could. It may take him 3 years, or it may take him 3 starts. I don't know. Maybe talk to me again in 3 weeks. Maybe I'll change my tune. But right
Yeah.
now, I'm out on him. If he doesn't win that spot in the rotation, do you like Yariel Rodriguez? Do you like Ricky Tiedemann for the spot? Mitch White? Who do you like for that last spot in the Jays rotation?
Probably Bowden Francis would probably be my pick right now. Not Tiedemann. I think I just don't think that's in the cards for him. Like I think he starts the season in the minors. I don't think the Jays just aren't desperate to promote him. I think he's really good, but put him in the minors. He hasn't thrown a lot of innings. Rodriguez is the other guy. Rodriguez could totally be the guy.
Yep.
But Bowden Francis, they're using him as a starter in spring training.
Okay.
Like nobody other than Jays fans really noticed what he did last year, but as a reliever, 173 RA, 0.83 whip,
Those are good.
35 to 8 strikeout to walk. And the Jays management and the Jays other pitchers really like him. So I'm not saying that he's going to be awesome, or like I'm not being like, hey, watch out for Bowden Francis. This guy's. It could be Rodriguez. I think there's a good chance it could be Rodriguez, but if it's not Bowden Francis, like he was a starter pretty much his entire minor league career. He worked out of the bullpen for the Jays because their starting crew was so remarkably healthy last year that they really just needed to
And
cover
he was
Manoah.
terrible as a starter in AAA
He
in
was terrible as a
2022.
starter in AAA in 2022. He was, but if you look at the
Yeah.
rest of his minor league career, actually just okay. But last year he seemed to maybe figure some things out.
Turns 28 in April too.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, he's not someone I'm drafting.
Right.
Hey, Tout Wars Draft Holds 50 rounds. We'll see.
Yeah, you might. You
maybe
might.
maybe in the 40s,
Pocket
around
pick.
40
Yep.
something. But I know he's someone the Jays, like I said, the other Jays pitchers have talked about as he could be our fifth starter if we need him. But Rodriguez probably makes more sense. Rodriguez has been very vocal that he is a starter and wants to be a starter. So
Nice of him that he's cleared like his exam and customs and all that
yeah,
sort of stuff.
yeah.
So
So
now we can see, because he's kind of like a big black box,
yeah,
He's Cuban, he pitched in Japan before, but not last year. He didn't pitch anywhere last year. So he's a tricky guy to handicap.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. 26 years old, could be all over the map. Like they could start him, and there's another one. That was the other thought. My other thought on Bowden Francis, I guess, is they could start Rodriguez in Buffalo just to give him a few starts before they throw him, as a major league starter, and just kind of let him get rolling. But we'll see if Rodriguez has a great spring, maybe. But whereas Francis is someone who's like not a big prospect, he's not someone they really have to manage. If he comes out of spring training and he's built up, he's their fifth starter. He tries to throw 5 innings a few times and see how it goes.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, very good. You know what? I think we're going to call it at this point here. It's 12:17 in the East Coast, which you're Canadian, so it's about midnight your time after accounting for the exchange rate. So, but hey, thanks everybody for participating in the live stream with us there, or if you listen to the podcast afterward. If you like this podcast, please, and you're watching on Yahoo, please hit the like and subscribe button there. It really helps us out a lot. It helps us kind of like gather more momentum. Same thing wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe, hit that like button, give us reviews, give us feedback. Let us know what we could do for you guys there. We got good feedback in the chat, asking for more content on the 10 and 12 league format. So we'll try to focus on that a little bit there. So everybody, thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back at you again next Tuesday. Thanks to Fantrax for their sponsorship. Have a good day. Take care.